the summer of 1974, young women began disappearing across the Pacific Northwest. There were no obvious connections, no clear suspects, no witnesses who could explain what was happening. Then a name started appearing in police reports. Ted. Just Ted. Witnesses described a polite, well-spoken young man. He wore nice clothes. He smiled easily. He seemed trustworthy. But behind that ordinary face was one of the most extensive murder investigations in American history. And for years, he stayed one step ahead of the police. Theodore Robert Bundy appeared to be the last person anyone would suspect. He attended college. He volunteered in politics. He studied law. Friends described him as intelligent, confident, and ambitious. To many people, he looked like someone destined for success. But investigators would later discover a darker reality hidden behind that image. During the early 1970s, young women began disappearing from college towns across Washington and Oregon. At first, authorities treated the cases separately. Different cities, different jurisdictions, different victims. No one realized they might be hunting the same person. Witnesses started reporting something unusual. A young man would approach women in public places. Sometimes he appeared injured. Sometimes he pretended to need help carrying books or loading items into a vehicle. He introduced himself with a simple name. Ted. The reports seemed harmless. But investigators eventually noticed the same description appearing again and again. Attractive, polite, educated. What made the investigation difficult was that he didn't fit the public image of a dangerous criminal. He blended into everyday life, and that made him incredibly difficult to identify. Like many criminals who believe they are smarter than everyone else, Ted eventually became overconfident. In Utah, a young woman named Carol Jensen reported that a man posing as a police officer attempted to force her into a vehicle. She escaped. More importantly, she survived. Her testimony gave investigators something they desperately needed: a living witness. For the first time, detectives had a detailed account from someone who had seen the suspect up close. When Ted was later stopped by police, officers discovered several suspicious items inside his vehicle. Individually, they meant very little. Together, they painted a troubling picture. Investigators began connecting cases that stretched across multiple states. The carefully constructed image he had spent years building was beginning to crack. For the first time, the man who always seemed one step ahead was making mistakes.
Even after his arrest, the story wasn't over. Ted made a decision that surprised authorities. He chose to participate heavily in his own legal defense. That decision gave him opportunities few defendants ever received. He spent hours inside courtrooms, hours studying procedures, hours observing security weaknesses. Then, in 1977, he made his move. During a courthouse appearance, he escaped. The disappearance triggered an immediate manhunt. Days later, authorities found him and returned him to custody. But investigators underestimated his determination. Months later, he escaped again, this time from inside a detention facility. The second escape was far more successful. For weeks, one of the most wanted fugitives in America had vanished. Law enforcement agencies across multiple states launched a massive search, and once again, Ted seemed to be one step ahead. In February 1978, the search finally came to an end. After months on the run, Ted was stopped by police during a routine encounter. But investigators had spent years building their case. Information from different states was finally being connected. Witness testimony, physical evidence, investigative reports. Separate pieces of a puzzle that now pointed in the same direction. The man who had spent years avoiding identification could no longer stay ahead of the evidence. Detectives from multiple jurisdictions began working together, comparing timelines, sharing information, verifying witness accounts. For the first time, the investigation was operating as a single, coordinated effort. Ted Bundy became one of the most studied criminal cases in modern American history, not because he was a criminal mastermind, but because he challenged assumptions. For years, investigators searched for someone who looked dangerous, someone who stood out, someone who fit the image people expected. Instead,
they found someone who blended into everyday life. The investigation changed how law enforcement approached similar cases for decades afterward, because the most important lesson was also the simplest. Danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it hides behind an ordinary smile, and that is what makes it so difficult to see coming.